Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, carrying out your charitable wishes forever, whether it's helping shelter animals, feeding the homeless, enhancing the arts, or supporting students. Learn more at leaveabequest.org.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Social determinants of health, things like your income, education, where you live, access to health care, and even your race can have a direct impact on your heart health. February is Heart Health Month, so on today's Another View, we focus on ways to take care of your heart in light of these and other social disparities. Our favorite cardiologist, Dr. Newby, is here with information on ways to ensure the most important organ in our bodies is strong and is healthy. Another View on Health, that's coming up next, right after this national, regional, and local news from NPR and WHRO News.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Lot to get to today, and I want to start by telling you about a couple of really exciting things going on in the area that I think you may be interested in. First of all, if you are in the market for buying a home, you really want to check out this Saturday called Chatting It Up Live, Home Buying with Virginia Housing. And this is a free, frequently asked questions series for first-time home buyers. It's going to be held at the Addicts Theater, which is at 1010 Church Street here in Norfolk from 10 until 2 p.m. And for more information, you can go to virginiahousing.com/chattingituplive. They have lots of information and lots of people to help you in that endeavor. And then I hope that some of you will join me this Saturday at Jamestown Settlement after Angelo, is a one-day program honoring the legacy of one of the first African women mentioned by name in the historical record at Jamestown. This is going to be Saturday, February the 25th, and I will be interviewing and talking with Angelo reenactor Valerie Gray Holmes, and we will be talking about Angelo's experience. She was one of the first African women to show up on our shores. So come to Jamestown Settlement and check that out. And if you'd like more information, you can go to, you can call 757-253-4838. Poets, those of you who are out there who are between the ages of 13 and 19 and you are interested in poetry, Teens with a Purpose is looking for you. They are putting on the Hampton Roads Youth Poet Laureate 2023 and the inaugural Virginia Youth Poet Laureate 2023. So there are two different opportunities for you to become the kind of the spokesperson and to share your poetry, especially if you are interested in civic engagement. Now, this program identifies young writers and leaders who are committed to civic engagement, and winners receive cash prizes, premier performance opportunities throughout the state, plus an opportunity to qualify to become a National Youth Poet Laureate. Now, they are accepting applications through February 28th, so you don't have a lot of time. If you want more information, go to 757-747-2679 or info@twpthemovement.org. So get out there. And parents and students, if you're looking for scholarships, Hampton Roads Community Foundation wants to hear from you. The deadline is March 1st for scholarships for financial help for the 2023-24 school year. You can go to hamptonroadscf.org to find out more information and to apply. And finally, on March the 7th, I have the incredible honor of having a fireside chat with Valerie Jarrett. She is the Chief Executive Officer and member of the Board of Directors for the Barack Obama Foundation. She will be speaking at William & Mary on March the 7th at 6:30 p.m. at the Sadler Center. And She also, you will recall, was the senior advisor to the President Obama back when he was in office. And she will speak on values-based leadership with a focus on William and Mary's values. So it is free. It is open to the public. You can go to news.wm.edu to find out more information and get the registration link. It is free, but you will need a ticket to get in. So that is news.wm.edu for more information. So just some things happening in the community. So the statistics are alarming. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, African Americans are 30% more likely to die from heart disease than non-Hispanic whites. Heart disease is the leading cause of death in the United States, so our heart health is critical for everyone, but particularly for Black people. Our favorite cardiologist, Dr. Keith Newby, joins me to talk about healthcare disparities and the impact on our heart health. Hey, Dr. Newby.
Hey, how you doing, Barbara?
I'm doing good. I am doing good. This is just reading the statistics. I read a statistic that said 55% of African Americans have high blood pressure, which is
absolutely
key towards your heart health. I was just amazed at that.
Well, a lot of times you'll find that a lot of these diseases that are chronic are asymptomatic, and that's the problem. You know, if you don't feel bad, oftentimes you'll ignore things or you don't get it checked, and blood pressures that go unnoticed and they're elevated lead to, they say if you have a blood pressure of 140 over 90, which some people may say that's not that bad. But if you, a lot of people, because they're like 200 over 110 on a regular basis. But if you have 140 over 90 blood pressure, that's stage 2 hypertension, you have a 50% risk of developing heart failure within 5 years.
Wow.
25% risk of heart attack, 35% risk of stroke, 35% risk of kidney failure.
So this is not something to play around with.
Not at all.
No question. So, we're talking today about kind of looking at the social determinants of health and how they impact your heart health. But let's remind people, if you will, please, of what are social determinants of health?
Well, essentially, if you think about, social determinants of things like economic stability, your level of education, your ability to have access to health care, your neighborhood and your built environment, and other kind of social community contexts that we see that, can impact like anxiety and other types of issues that people have to deal with on an everyday basis. When you really think about that, you hear the term, and the only reason I brought this up to you as something I thought was important for us to talk about is, in my master's public health program,
right.
This is a big issue in the UNC program. And the reason it is because you look at it, 80% of diseases are oftentimes occurring as a result of these social determinants. Like 20% just pure the disease itself, but the causes of these issues, hypertension, diabetes, and we'll get into that why that's the issue, is caused by these social determinants because they impact. You think about it. If you are, say you're housing insecure, and the definition of a housing insecurity is if you're spending 30% or greater of your income on your living condition. So that means, do you have money to go to the doctor? Do you have money for transportation? Do you have money for your medications? Then the stress level of trying to rob Peter to pay Paul starts to go up. So then you have these overlaying conditions that lead to eating poorly. Because you think about it, if I'm struggling eating, I'd rather go to McDonald's, get that dollar value meal, which I can feed everybody, versus going to a grocery store that may have more healthy choices, but maybe 4 times the cost. So people are trying to figure out how to live their life in a way that their families are eating, yet they're healthy at the same time, and those don't go hand in hand.
And social determinants of health also include the stress of racism, of microaggressions, and so forth, too, correct?
Yeah. Yes, all those stress. Anything that creates a stressful environment is part of that social context, in terms of as a social determinant. So there's so much overlay with all this stuff. If you're food insecure, that also goes back to what we were talking about before. I always say that to me, the top of it is the housing situation. If your house secure, that puts you in a better position for everything else. But if you're not, that's really almost like the apex of the problem, and everything kind of filters down from there because one thing leads to the next. If your house is insecure, you're probably going to be food insecure. Food insecure, you're probably going to be income insecure, which means the jobs you're working don't allow you to be able to live at your best.
Yeah, and they don't. A lot of times, those jobs too don't allow you to take the time off to go see somebody like you, and so forth. And when I was reading up on this, I was really surprised, but I had only because I really hadn't thought about it. But they even broke it down to the cost of parking at some medical places. People don't think about that if they don't have an economic or if they're not in a socioeconomic setting that causes them to have to think that far down. But that's a real thing.
Well, I tell you, I find it interesting and the reason that's relevant is even in my own personal practice. Now, we have a parking deck that is it's a paying parking deck. Mm-hmm. But, we validate all our patients' parking so they don't have to worry about it, and we do that. And I'm going to guarantee you, out of the patients I see on a day-to-day basis, at least 50%, when they're about to leave, where can I get this validated? and they pull that ticket out, and I laugh to myself about it. But when you think about it, mm-hmm. They're like saying, listen, I mean, that may be, $2 or $3, but that's $2 or $3 I can spend somewhere else.
Exactly.
And we do that because we want to make sure people do want to come see us because we mm-hmm. help to keep you alive and healthy, and that all impacts.
So, Keith, how do doctors in general and cardiologists, I guess in particular, but even primary care doctors, because they're the ones who have to refer the patient to you to begin with, are they looking at social determinants of health as a cause, and are they talking, does it have an impact on how they're prescribing to their patients what they should do next?
I think yes and no. Okay. I think we're starting to, and the unfortunate reality is the situation with George Floyd has kind of opened people's eyes to a lot of what we're seeing as it relates to social determinants and just the whole issue that got people talking. Mm-hmm. And that discussion has helped people understand how these social determinants impact. I mean, almost if you look at Medicare guidelines and now implemented that hospitals have to address social determinants. A lot of docs were doing it before, but now it's becoming kind of the mainstay, because we're finding that so much of it impacts that person's ability. Because we write a prescription for medication, mm-hmm. And they can't afford that medication. The problem with us on our end, we don't really, because you got so many insurance carriers, and we don't know, as doctors, we may give a generic pill, but mm-hmm. But we don't know what that cost is going to be to that patient. It's all based on the plan they have. So, mm-hmm. Sometimes, and I try my best to be mindful of brand name versus generic drugs. But I'm going to tell you, Big Pharma, I'm between insurance companies and Big Pharma. People are talking about us making a lot of money. I'm like, listen, I think I calculated how much I make per hour with the hours I work. It came up like $3. You know what I mean? Because we work all the time. I mean, day, night, and you've seen stuff I can send you at 2 a.m.
Yep.
I mean, because this is part of the job. But Big Pharma, they're making out on people, and I keep bringing that up because I think not to be conspiracy theorists, but when you think, to me, when you get a brand name drug, they'll say, okay, the reason why this drug costs so much is that, we had to do marketing, we do, R&D, all mm-hmm. this stuff. I'm like, okay. And I can tell you a drug in particular was sometimes we have atrial fibrillation, which is a top chamber heart rhythm problem. It's a really rampant rhythm disturbance. A drug I use called Defetilide, which is now generic, when it was a brand name drug, and it went generic about 3 or 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I was all jumping up and down because it was so expensive as a brand name drug. but it was a great drug to use for this problem. And then when I heard it was going generic, I was like, great. I said, now I can finally get patients to afford it. It was just as much almost as
a
brand
generic.
name.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I was like, what? Well, hold up, time out. But because you're saying there's no more R&D, there's no more marketing. So why is it just as expensive now as it was before? And this is the stuff that people don't push these questions out, and they should, because, why let them make all this money at the expense of patients?
Speaking of medications too, that another article that I was reading quoted this Black cardiologist. Her name is Dr. Najeri Thande, and she said, quote, "Some physicians are not aware that certain blood pressure medications tend to be more effective than others in Black Americans." Is that true?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely, no question, because it's a lot of some of the genetic issues, that you'll find African Americans. So African Americans are typically more sodium sensitive. So the medications that are more effective in African Americans are diuretics and calcium channel blockers. White Americans, or just whites, period, not just Americans, just period, more the things like ACE receptor blockers, ACE inhibitors, and beta blockers are more effective in that group, but African Americans are more effective with diuretics and calcium channel blockers, and the reason being is just because the form of hypertension people have, we're salt sensitive. So that's why we jump on people so much about like the fast foods and the canned foods, because that sodium content impacts significantly on blood pressure, to the point where you could say, like, say somebody has, if you cut your sodium down to 1,500 milligrams, which is what the recommended amount is, and that ain't much, because I'm going to tell you, a teaspoon of salt is 2,300 milligrams of sodium, a teaspoon. So when you think about all your food all day long, because I can go to a fast food joint, and that's 7-8 grams right there.
Right there, yeah, exactly.
Right there. So, but if you can cut your sodium content to 1,500, you can cut your blood pressure down, and it's no joke, almost 8 to 10 points, just on that alone, just sodium
just by
restriction.
getting rid of the salt.
Getting rid of the salt.
Okay, I hear you.
I know, and trust me, I'm feeling you. I came up in the environment where ham, eggs, salt, and bacon, sauce. I came up in that environment, so I know it's not easy. But I'm just saying, if you look at brass tacks, is what it is, and I tell you, and exercise is the second thing: sodium restriction and exercise and weight loss. If you look at what are the three things that patients can do that can drop their blood pressures 10 to 15 points just on lifestyle change. Those three things.
Wow.
You'd be surprised, but the problem is people don't do it. They'll say, "Oh, I don't hardly eat anything." I'm like, "But you're 150 pounds overweight. That's physically impossible for you to say you're not hardly." Now, your hardly may be different from somebody else's hardly.
Yeah.
But I said, but you got to live in a reality-based world that you are doing something wrong.
Doctors also have to talk to patients, though, about ways that they can achieve these things within the context of their life.
Yes,
right?
I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay.
I 100% agree. That's the thing. That's where the social determinants come in, because a doctor has to recognize the problem. I tell you, if you look at the best of both worlds, what you'll find, though, and this, of course, this doesn't really work this way in most doctors' offices, but if you had like a social worker that, could be in your office with a nurse and the provider, you'd be surprised how much, because the problem is we got to see 25, 30 people a day. It's hard to stop and say, let's try to work through, what your home situation is, what's your work situation. I know a lot of my patients individually because, I do have that kind of relationship with them. So things I know other docs may not have asked, but I do. But if you had a social worker that could dig and try to kind of really find out what are the challenges that this person has in their life that may be driving this ship. Because I do believe the stemming of gun violence, I think, is a factor of social determinants. I'm convinced that is a factor. You think about mentorship. If you're in a home where you may not have a father there, or the father may be incarcerated, or if you have some other issues that may be going on, that the family's broken and doesn't have that support that they need, what's going to happen to the poor kid? That's coming up in this environment where they don't have the mentorship they need. That's going to help them see that they can do things different. And that's the part that breaks your heart, because you see this stuff every day. And how do you fix this? Is such a big problem to try to fix. It really can be challenging at best.
757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. What questions do you have about your heart health, and things that you can do to be healthier? 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. So, Keith, since most doctors don't have a social worker in their office to be able to dig down, can patients take some of this on in terms of kind of thinking about what are the most critical things in the time that you have with your doctor that you need to talk about before you get there?
Well, that's a slightly tough question, because when patients are trying to say, okay, I want to make sure I get my health stuff out the way, because I want to make sure, and we're on a time factor, unfortunately. So it's sometimes I find I have to take extra time with patients because they need it, and some of them they just need somebody sometimes just to talk to, because the stresses they got going on in their life is just so profound. And just coming, I have some patients come to me, and I'm a cardiologist, and they do have heart issues, but I'm finding that sometimes the stress level impacts their symptom base. And sometimes when they come in, they just want to just talk and just get stuff off the chest. And I just give them that time, because that's important to me, that I need to know you as a patient, and in order for me to know you, I have to listen to you and hear what's going on in your life. So I think the patients have to be direct, to say, if they look at their life, and what are the factors they think about these social determinants. If they're under stress trying to even be able to pay to see their doc, they need to bring that up, because we know, and then that means that's going to trigger us to say, okay, how can we advise you as a patient to say, okay, what lifestyle changes can you make that's going to help? And that's why we do, because like with the work I do with Centera, we do, trying to come up with new ways, job programs, things to get people in a better place, because if they're working at a place where they get minimum wage, that's going to be hard to live off of. Yeah. So if we find that we can get them connected to the right people, and to have more job opportunities, because I'm going to tell you, I always hate to see my plumber come to my house, because I know that's going to be, I'm getting, but plumbers make good money.
Yeah,
electricians make good money, and it's not, you don't have to have a college degree, but I tell you, they have this, the airline kind of repair maintenance. Those people are coming out making $80,000 and higher, just coming right out of school, and it's like a 1.5, 2-year program. You're coming out of high school, go do that, and you can make close to $100,000 just right off the bat. Those are things, the job opportunities that people just don't know about, but would help them be able to take care of their families better.
Exactly. So let's talk a little bit about the heart, since we have this time to remind folks again. Remind us again what the symptoms are of a heart attack.
So let's talk a couple of things.
Okay.
Cardiac arrest, and let's talk heart attack, which are two different things. Okay. And let's start with heart attack, since you asked that. So a heart attack is when, think about, and I use it, and me and my analogy.
Yeah.
Let's go back through that. Look at your heart like a house. Let's use that as our analogy. So if you have your foundation, your structure, your walls, rooms, doors leading from room to room, look at your heart as like that. You have the structure of your heart itself, and you have rooms called chambers, and you have heart valves, or like doors that open and close, so you go from one room to the next, and that's how blood flows through the heart. You have electrical circuits in your heart, much like if you in your house you flip up your light switch, you expect the lights to come on. You have plumbing. So when you have a heart attack, that's a problem with your plumbing. So if you have a pipe going to a sink, and say you turn on the water, nothing comes out, but you go to another faucet and some water, plenty of water comes out of that faucet, but not out that one. That means there's a blockage in that pipe. So you could have a partial blockage, you could have a complete blockage. So most heart attacks are caused by complete blockages, typically atherosclerotic plaque that ruptures. And when it ruptures, because it grows as that plaque grows from eating that crap that you're not supposed to eat, and when it pops open, look at it like I said, you had a pimple that burst, and but when inside a vessel, you have nowhere to go. I mean, because the vessel's enclosed, the body senses that rupture as a injury, so it's going to send platelets and clotting factors trying to tackle that problem. But the problem is you got a tube that only so big. So as those clotting mechanisms rise and it occludes the vessel, hence that's what causes a heart attack. So symptoms associated with that are characteristically chest tightness or squeezing. They're really intense. But it doesn't have to be. That's the problem with heart stuff. There's no set in stone way that heart attacks present. But the commonality is that you have chest tightness with shortness of breath characteristically, and it tends to be a squeezing tightness sensation that it may radiate to the jaw, may not, could radiate down the arm, may not. But, but that's kind of the character. It's usually sudden in onset, and it's intense. Some people become diaphoretic or sweaty, and some don't. But again, this is the downside of heart stuff. It can sneak up on you. What I always tell patients, I say, listen, look at your age, look at your condition. If you are, say, 65, you're diabetic, think about what risk factors can cause heart attacks. Where if you have hypertension, diabetes, high cholesterol levels, if you're overweight or obese, you smoke, genetics, if you have a family history of that, those are risk factors. So if you have a bunch of those and you're like 65 and you're feeling this, I'm going to treat you different versus a 19-year-old that comes to me with those same symptoms, because I know the likelihood of that 19-year-old having a heart attack is going to be very, very small versus that 65-year-old where their pre-test probability is going to be very high.
Gotcha.
So you have to look at the clinical characteristics, but I tell patients, don't try to self-diagnose. If you recognize, I say, understand your medical condition. Don't blow off stuff. If you have hypertension, don't blow it off. If you're diabetic, just because you may not feel anything, that doesn't mean it's not a problem there. So if you recognize that you do have risk, if you start developing symptoms, you need to get to the hospital quickly, because time is muscle. The longer you take to get to the hospital and to get the vessel open, the less likely you will recover from that, and you will have permanent heart damage. If we can get you within 90 minutes of onset of symptoms and get that vessel open, there's a very, very high likelihood that you will have a full recovery.
So pay attention to that. If you're just joining us, we're talking about social determinants of health and the impact on our heart health with cardiologist Dr. Keith Newby. So that's the heart attack. And we were also talking about, what was the other one?
Cardiac arrest.
Cardiac arrest. Yeah.
So
now, what's the difference?
Bring the football player in for that.
Okay.
So look at cardiac. The difference is that a cardiac arrest is an electrical problem. So when we go back to that house issue, if you have a blocked pipe, that's a heart attack. Now, a cardiac arrest is if you say, like, you flip on your light switch and you get flickering. It's not conducive, like, you have to have, the way the heart has to work is electrical circuits have to go from point A to point B. So it has to go from top to bottom in an ordered contraction way to make each muscle cell that's touching each other contract. So if you have it, if it's in an ordered fashion, the heart's going to pump, and it pump effectively. Now, if you have a cardiac arrest, that means you're in something called ventricular fibrillation or ventricular tachycardia, which means that's a rapid heartbeat originating from the bottom chamber of the heart. The problem is those muscle cells aren't contracting like they should, so the pressure drops to zero, and that's when you see people lose consciousness. So now you can have a heart attack can cause a cardiac arrest, but they're not the same thing. So like the football player that had the event on the field, the issue becomes is, again, we go back to time, but in a cardiac arrest situation, time is everything. 2 to 3 minutes, if you don't start CPR in a person that has a cardiac arrest, they're going to start having brain damage. If you go 9 minutes without anybody recognizing that you've had a cardiac arrest and no CPR is administered, the likelihood of you recovering is less than 10%.
So that cardiac arrest is really serious. And
It's,
I mean, and if you see someone, or even if you're experiencing it, you really don't know which one it is, or do you?
no, you don't. Because it depends. Because again, a heart attack can cause a cardiac arrest. They could do it immediately.
Wow.
That's why we tell people, don't mess around with this stuff. If you have risk factors, don't blow off the blood pressure, don't blow off diabetes, because if your pressures are under control and your diabetes is under control, meaning your hemoglobin A1C and the diabetic is less than 7.0,
Mm-hmm.
and your cholesterol is where it's supposed to be, and you're not smoking, and you're exercising and doing all the right things, your likelihood of having a heart attack is much, much lower than somebody who's not doing that. We're talking, your risk may be 5%, maybe,
Okay.
versus 40 or 50,
Mm-hmm.
depending on if you're kind of being bad. So, but cardiac arrest, the reason why I bring that up is because what people don't really understand is the time factor, of what it takes to get somebody out of a cardiac arrest is key to everything in that situation. You have to be able to recognize if somebody goes down and you see them black out, you have to be able to immediately recognize whether or not they're in a cardiac arrest situation or not. That's why these AEDs, or these automatic external defibrillators, are important, because they will tell you, you put those patches on the patient, you cut it on, it's going to tell you what rhythm they're in, and to go ahead and shock them if that's the case. But if you don't have that with you, you have somebody around there really should be at least basic life support trained. And that's why we push that issue, because if you recognize that somebody is in an arrest situation and they're not breathing, you don't feel a pulse, you need to immediately start CPR.
Mm-hmm.
And that can save lives. It really can. And I've seen it in real time before.
Real time. So, are there things that you should be paying attention to? Because you were talking about before that with high blood pressure, for example,
Yeah.
you don't feel bad, so you don't go get it checked out. Are there other things or signs or symptoms or things that may happen that you really need to pay attention to? They're not as dramatic as what happens if you're going into cardiac arrest or heart attack, but could be leading towards that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
if you kind of look at, say, as an example, if your weight's going up, say the one thing that, when I gain weight, I know why I gain weight, because I'm eating too much. I don't need a rocket scientist to tell me that.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is with a lot of patients, it's like they can explain away their weight gain. Oh, well, everybody in my family, we big boned it.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's that mean? Number one. I said, number two, how many large third world country people do you know?
Yeah.
I said, they really don't have anything to eat. I said, we live in a society where our food choices get us in trouble, because that's what sells, and that's what we're exposed to on an everyday basis. So, and it's not that it's anybody's fault. I just try to bring the realities of what we have. So if your weight's starting to go up, you need to, there are things that if you're getting, especially as you're starting to get in that 25 to 30-year-old age range, because I had a first cousin that was diagnosed with hypertension at 16.
Wow.
And you see young diabetics
And I was going to say,
now.
that's starting to happen more and more, isn't it?
And that's because of the obesity rates are going up. So with that comes type 2 diabetes, which leads to all these other medical conditions. So if you recognize the signs, because you still may be asymptomatic. People say, I get a nosebleed or I have a headache, therefore I have hypertension. I'm going to tell you, that ain't it. That's not going to really help you make that determination. And that maybe you had a headache for another reason. It could be a sinus problem for all you know. But it's really a matter of recognizing, I'm at risk. Do I have a family history? A lot of families don't talk about their medical conditions, but we should, because it's not so much getting somebody's business, but you want people to know what you have, because that may be transmitted to your family members. And if that's the case, if there is a family history of hypertension, you have a higher likelihood of getting hypertension, and you need to be able to recognize that by getting your blood pressure checked. There's so many avenues now. I get people ask me about those automatic cuffs that you could get out the store. They're thinking that they may not be accurate. Well, they're plenty accurate if you put it on correctly. But that's the thing. You have to follow the instructions, make sure you put it on right. But they can be extremely helpful, because that's how I make determinations about white coat syndrome, because I do have patients who come to the office and their blood pressures are high, not because they have hypertension, but because they're nervous coming to the doctor's office. So you have to be able to find out outside of the doctor's office, is their pressure still high? I mean, if they went to Joe's Crab Shack, a half hour before they came to see me, which I do have people that do that, and I'm looking at them like, really? I mean, you decide 30 minutes before you come see me, you're going to go to Joe's Crab Shack? but that's
or
the
go to a
reality.
restaurant. Let's not call out anybody
Man,
specifically.
listen, I will. But all that is the realities of what we have. Our choices do impact.
Yeah.
And if we exercise more, if we're on a regimen that we really did take care of ourselves better, you'd be surprised how you could reduce, because cardiovascular disease is still the number one killer in the United States.
Yeah.
Still, I mean, out did COVID, anything else. So, I tell people all the time, if you can really take this heed into what we should do, how we should live, what things we should eat and not eat.
Right.
I don't know if you want to bring up your
I
article.
was just getting ready to tell you. So in Huffington Post yesterday, they asked cardiologists what one food they never or rarely eat to protect their hearts. So here's what they said. Here are the foods: chopped liver, breakfast sausages, margarine, steak, bacon, deep fried chicken, donuts, bologna. Okay, so let me see. 1, 2, 3. 3 of those, I'm in trouble. But
yeah, listen, when
that
I read
steak and
when I
that
saw
bacon, I'm just like, come on now.
Listen, when I saw that article, I laughed when I saw the bologna, because listen, in college, that was the staple.
Exactly.
That was a staple of college diet. But,
it sure was.
But I tell them, they ain't got to worry about me with chopped liver. You ain't got to worry about me with that one at all. But the other stuff. But think about it. I go to Piggly Wiggly.
Mm-hmm.
I always joke. My wife's cousin, he comes over. He and my wife's brother, they go to Piggly Wiggly when they come and stopping through, bringing that stuff over. I'm looking at that stuff they're eating. I say, really?
They go there to get their their ham hocks and all the rest of that stuff.
But it's cheap. I mean, and I mean, cost effectiveness is no question, but what it's doing to us is what the problem is.
So, what is your never eat food or rarely eat food?
I rarely eat donuts. I mean, rarely. I rarely eat donuts. I don't. I really haven't had.
And why are
fried
donuts
chicken
an issue? Yeah, why are donuts an issue?
Because that's just sugar, pure sugar and bread. I mean, you really think about it. That's like pure sugar and puffed bread.
And also the oil that is cooked in.
Is the oil that's cooked in, all that is trans fats.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like a heart attack waiting to happen. I'm not I used to like fried chicken, but I haven't had fried chicken in a long time. I'm so used to not eating it now, that I don't, I mean, I still like some bacon periodically, but I'm not even a big bacon person anymore.
Really?
I may eat it on a Sunday if me and the family, we go out, I may get a piece then, but it's rare. I just don't, and I think that's, what are some of the other things up there? Bologna, however. Bologna forever.
Yeah, I haven't had bologna in forever either, because that was the college staple. You're absolutely right. The other one was breakfast sausages and margarine. And margarine.
I don't like margarine either way. I mean, if I'm going to have some, it's going to be butter. But even with bread, I don't eat that much bread anymore either. I mean, it's just because, a lot of it is, it's all processed. That's the problem. And you don't know, because, I'm going to tell you, not to be a conspiracy theorist, but I'm kind of wondering sometimes, because people are gone plumb loco in this country now. I mean, we kind of fight over everything. We do crazy things. I'm wondering if it's the food we eat. I mean, and the reason I say that is because you remember when I was growing up, you get a pepper, like a green pepper with like a little thing. Mm-hmm. Now they like huge.
Yeah.
So so you kind of they're pumping something in it, and when you look at organic vegetables, they don't look the same as the other stuff that you get out of these stores. So I'm kind of wondering, they're doing something to this
a
stuff
lot
to
of
make
chemicals and so forth that they use
so you
to
got
grow.
to be careful. My wife, she does all this. She got these tower gardens that she keeps in her house now, so she grows a lot of our stuff, salad.
Oh, that's great.
I mean, it's kind of cool because it's like self-contained garden. So she's like, screw all this other stuff out here. I'm trying to help this family live. So she gets that, and she grows her own stuff. So I sneak hers.
So let me ask you this: is there something in particular that you would say to women, and particularly African American women, about their heart health and what they need to be really paying attention to?
Absolutely. Women, unfortunately, have, and we don't know why, but their symptom base can be different from textbook stuff. And that's why a lot of women got sent home and had heart attacks and died at home, because they presented with symptoms that didn't sound like heart disease. And they get, of course, written off as being high anxiety or whatever. But, the thing is that now what is true is that when you look at age differences between men and women in terms of when you start seeing heart disease pop up, for men it's younger, usually 45, 50. Women is typically older, 60, 65, characteristically. But you have a woman that has high blood pressure, diabetes, overweight, cholesterol stuff, and their risk is higher. So the symptom base could be different. I've had women that say all they felt was they were just tired, just more exhausted. They like couldn't do much of anything physical activity wise. They just felt totally exhausted. And it was like an acute onset. So things that happen, like, now I'm not talking about the graduate stuff because you've been working yourself half to death and you're taking care of 3 kids and all this other stuff. I expect you to be tired then. But I'm talking about acuity of it, like you felt pretty good 1 minute, and boom,
all of a sudden
something
you're really
hit.
tired.
That's the kind of stuff you have to watch out for in women, because they will present very atypical for heart disease, and they have heart disease. So I take every woman seriously. We should anyway. I don't believe in all that blowing people off just because you don't think they have something. I mean, you got to look at the whole picture. But that's why we come into play, but that's why I ask women to make sure they look at themselves, meaning they understand their history. Do they have blood pressure? What's their blood pressure run? Are they diabetic? Do they have cholesterol problems? Don't blow it off. Embrace it and figure out how to fix it. Because if you can do that, then you reduce your risk significantly. Then you don't have to be so concerned. But I always tell people, don't try to self-diagnose. If you have a question, I'd rather you come in and be seen and evaluated. That way we know for sure that you are okay. Versus you try to do this on your own. Well, my cousin told me I'd be all right, so therefore I am. I'm like, well, who's your cousin?
Do you have? Is your practice more? Do you have more female patients or male patients, or is it even?
It's kind of even, But I have a lot of both, to be honest with you, because I'm a relationship kind of guy. I like knowing patients well helps me take better care of you. So if I understand it, that's what's helped me grow, because people know, I care about them, really care about people. And my Christian beliefs take me down that path, but they know in my practice how I conduct myself, how I interact with people that's what has grown my practice. So, because to me, and because we got bad when I look at the young docs now, a lot of people don't take social histories anymore when they interview patients. But that social history, that goes back to those social determinants we talked about before. Are you employed? Where are you employed? What's your job like? Or do you feel comfortable with your income that is meeting the needs you have? Do you a smoker, non-smoker? Did you ever smoke? Do you drink alcohol? What's your situation like at home? Do you feel comfortable with everything? Are you under high stress all the time? All these questions that we fail to ask now impact our ability to understand what factors you have that could be contributed to your health condition.
And we got about 2 minutes left, but that's also why it's important for patients then to also tell the truth.
Yeah,
because, when you put down on that little form and you don't want to say you drink, so many glasses of wine or alcohol, a week and so forth, because you're trying to make yourself look better for the doctor.
Yeah, I always laugh when I have like male patients with their wives come in with them, and they'll say like they're not doing certain things, and the wife in the background shaking her head, and, But a lot of times, and I always tell patients, you can lie all you want to, but we can. I mean, we're trained to figure stuff out.
Yeah.
And I tell them all the time. I say, don't. I mean, lying to me is not helping anything. I mean, because you're just ignoring the truth. Don't do that. Embrace your issues, understand them, and figure out how do we together help you get better.
Absolutely. So in the last minute that we have, how are you doing in school? How is it coming?
It's going well. I'm staying my hype. In the UNC world, They have high pass, pass, and marginal and fail. High pass is all my courses.
Excellent.
I'm doing quite well. And I want to say one thing real quick on the last minute. My youngest is graduating from high school this year.
Oh.
She has been accepted at 8 universities.
Oh, fantastic! Congratulations.
So far, she has accepted. She's going to go to UNC Chapel Hill in the fall.
Oh, wow.
I'm so proud of that young lady. I don't know what to do.
That's fantastic.
She is just, and she's like, I'm all excited. She's like, oh, Dad, ain't no big deal.
Well, tell her that we are rooting for her, and congratulations from the Another View crew. We'll see you next month. Thank you so very much, as always, Dr. Keith Newby. He is a cardiologist, and he is our expert on every fourth Thursday of the month for Another View on Health. And we will be right back.
I'm with Marcellus, and you all are checking out Another View. Don't go anywhere. Check us out.
So how appropriate is it that we just heard from Wynton Marsalis? Because if you're hanging out in downtown Norfolk tomorrow and Saturday, you may hear some soulful jazz wafting through the air. 9 HBCU jazz ensembles, including Norfolk State, Hampton, and Elizabeth City State University, are participating in the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra and Virginia Arts Festival HBCU Jazz Residency. Wow, that's a mouthful, right? This unique collaboration provides an incredible experience for students, and here to tell us about it is Billy Banks. He's the longtime manager and business partner of jazz great Wynton Marsalis, who leads the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate this.
Let me say first, I was listening to that previous segment with Dr. Newby. What a great bit of information. Yes.
Dr. Newby keeps it real, and that's the thing that we really like, because I think it helps people, and particularly in the African American community, we've got to pay attention to our health. So we look at that, and we try to bring that information once a month with him.
And traveling on the road, with musicians performing, we don't always have the opportunity to protect our health like that. We're vulnerable.
That's very true.
We're out there, we're eating what we can find at times, and
it's a good point. Hadn't even thought about that.
Yes.
But let me get to what's going on here with this jazz residency. How did this collaboration come about?
Well, this is first. Let me say this is a real pleasure. It's something that we've been looking forward to at Jazz at Lincoln Center. Jazz at Lincoln Center is a performing arts organization based in New York. Was started basically in the late 80s by Wynton Marsalis and a few other people. We started doing concerts, just a few concerts, and it's grown. We have the first performing arts center in the world that was built exclusively for jazz. It's a major center, 3 performance spaces, a recording studio, all sorts of things. Mm-hmm. And we are very much interested in educating people about our music, our Native American music, and our Native African American music.
So we have 9 HBCUs. Those are historically black colleges and universities, for those of you who may not know what HBCU is. And that's Central State University, Elizabeth City State, Norfolk State, Gadsden State Community College, North Carolina A&T State University, Benedict College, Jackson State, Grambling State, and Hampton University. So there are 3 from the Hampton Roads area within our listening area that are participating.
This whole weekend is based on 2 programs that we do in New York. One is called Essentially Ellington, and we started this with high school bands from around the country, getting them to play the music of Duke Ellington in a competitive environment, bringing in school bands from all over the country. They compete, and we name 2 or 3 best, and we give them awards, we give them prizes. And then we were able to get underwriting for a program involving college bands, the Rudin Championship, and which we started about 4 years ago at Jazz at Lincoln Center. And we bring college bands in from around the country. And now this HBCU program is based on that type. But this is not really a competition this weekend. It's really a process of mentoring and education.
So we're jazz musicians from the Lincoln Center Orchestra are actually mentoring the college kids?
Absolutely. They're
That's
mentoring
fantastic.
the bands. They're working with the band directors. They're mentoring not only the music, but also lifestyle. They're letting them, and I hope that the band directors have had a chance to find out about the mentors, because each of the mentors in their own right are great musicians. They're great people. Some are multiple Grammy winners. They're
Wow, what an
really talented,
experience.
and in cases they have put aside parts of their career to come together to form the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra and work with Wynton Marsalis to keep this going year after year after year.
So two of the schools will be selected, or two of the bands, right, will be selected to actually open for Wynton in the orchestra on Saturday?
Yes, Saturday evening. Yeah, what's going to happen is during the day on Saturday, 7 bands will perform. And then the two there'll be a sort of an adjudication, and the 2 bands that best represent the elements of jazz, of rhythm and harmony and playing together and really getting into the essence of the music. Those 2 bands will be given the opportunity to perform first with themselves, and then to perform opening for the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra. Now, the interesting thing in that concert, too, is when these bands perform in the first half of the concert, one member from the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra will be featured with them.
Oh, wow.
So
what an experience for them.
They'll get a chance to actually play with one of their mentors.
That is fantastic. Now, tickets are available. I believe I have that information. You can call 757-282-2822 or go to the festival ticket office on Bank Street to get tickets for the concert. And it's Saturday night. Do you know what time it starts?
It starts at 7:30.
At 7:30 p.m. You know what? We've got 1 minute left. Really, really quickly. Is jazz for younger generations, is it coming back? Are they paying attention?
It hasn't gone anywhere, and it's always been there. But what we're doing is we're helping these school programs to really cultivate this music and nurture the students. There's been a hunger for this for a long time, and we're just providing the meal.
That is fantastic. You can go to vafest.org also to get tickets. And so thank you, Billy Banks, so much. I could probably talk to you for an hour about jazz and about everything that's going on, but I hope everything works out well.
It's such a great opportunity to come and work with students and to come to this area. It's great.
Thank you so very, very much. And thank you, audience, for spending an hour of your life with us today on Another View. If you'd like to hear this show again or share it with a friend, please visit our website, anotherviewradio.org, and you can download the podcast. And don't forget to sign up for our eView newsletter. It's a once-a-week reminder of upcoming shows. Next week on Another View, we're going to be talking with Sharon Waters and her family history being involved in the civil rights movement, but also the whole idea of keeping your family legacy. We'll listen to her story next week on our show. Our theme music is an original composition created especially for Another View by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Jordan Christie is our audio engineer. And Dr. Barry Graham answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Thanks so much for listening, and let's get together again next Thursday at noon for Another View.
Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, partnering with donors from all walks of life to improve southeastern Virginia through grants, scholarships, and leadership initiatives. Learn more at hamptonroadscf.org.